How are we doing, guys? It's Luke here this evening, and delighted to be joined by Jeffrey Page. Jeff, how are we doing?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. How you doing?
Yeah, really good, thanks. And yeah, I appreciate your time. Obviously, based out in Kansas, so with me being here in the UK, we've had to work out a bit of the time differences. But yeah, really
That's
appreciate your
right.
time and speaking to SimBoxx.
Yeah, of course, man. Appreciate y'all reaching out.
So the 27th of June, Jeffrey Page Jr., you make your return on the undercard of Deontay Wilder's return to the ring. Big event, a big show, and your first fight back in 8 years. So just how excited are you to make that return to the ring?
Yeah, man, I'm really excited to be a part of this big show on the Wilder undercard. It's going to be a big event. I'm looking to make a big return to the ring, and hopefully show up in style and show out in fashion.
Of course, so for those here in the UK, maybe followers around the world that won't know the story of Jeff Page Jr., you've not been in the ring since 2017. You're now jumping in with Jermaine McDonald after 8 years. What was the reason for that break away from the ring? You had a record of 18 and 3 beforehand, a respectable record, but then you took a hiatus. Can you talk us through that and why that came about?
Yeah, well, I went through I guess just had some family tragedies happen, and then just kind of one thing led to another. Kind of got off track a little bit, and then I got gifted some tickets to go watch Jake Paul fight Mike Tyson.
Right.
And somebody said, "Man, you need to get back in the ring and see if you can fight Jake Paul." I said, "There's absolutely no way he would ever take that fight." So, but hey, I'm here. I'm getting back in the ring, and I'll always speak the name out. You got to speak things into existence. So, if Jake Paul don't want it, I mean, shoot, dang, we can get Tommy Fury then. So,
Of course. So you know what? That was a little caveat that I didn't know he was going to go down there. So in general, what do you think of Jake Paul and his foray into boxing? And some people call it YouTube boxing. Some people appreciating that he's an actual boxer. What do you think of Jake Paul? And what did you make of Jake Paul fighting Mike Tyson? And he was a bona fide legend of the sport.
I mean, a lot of people will downplay Jake Paul and say he's bad for the sport, whatnot. I think he's great for the sport. He is bringing so many new fans to the sport of boxing. And even if you don't like him, people are still paying to watch him fight just to maybe see him get beat.
Mhm.
And that's just more money that is, more revenue and everything that's generated through boxing. And say what you want about him, but I think he's been great for the sport of boxing.
I think one of the things that we can say is the time and the investment he's putting into female boxing and that side of the sport with
Absolutely.
Amanda Serrano, and here in the UK, he's just signed up a load of our established world champions. So it's not only prospects he was looking at, but like Ellie Scottney, Savannah Marshall, Chantel Cameron, they're all on this big show in July. So I suppose, for those guys or those fans or those boxing hardcores that might not appreciate Jake Paul in the ring, you've got to commend him for his business acumen and what he's doing for other fighters.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, he's he's putting the stage out there for all these other fighters and these people that don't normally get the opportunity. As I think he's really, really helping the sport, regardless of what people want to say about him, dislike him or hate him. I think he's doing a phenomenal job with it. And if given the opportunity one day to share the ring with him, I'd love to do it. I think I'd put a beating on him, but that's just my experience, and I don't ever think I'd get that opportunity. He's pretty smart. He knows what he's doing, and I think he's doing a phenomenal job.
Of course, obviously, we've seen him take on, with all due respect, maybe faded MMA stars and people past the best, with all due respect. He's coming in against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., the father's son, and his father was a bona fide legend himself.
Yeah.
What do you think of him taking on Chavez Jr. at this stage of Julio's career?
A lot of people will say, "Oh, he's fighting, a has been, a bum, whatever." But what's his record now? 9-0 or 10-0, something like that.
Well, he's got the
So
loss on there to Fury, hasn't he? So something.
he's just getting started.
Yeah.
So regardless of what you want to say, like a lot of these guys that are building up their records and everything, a lot of guys cannot say they have fought the same caliber of guys at that early in their career and that have had, 200 plus amateur fights when he didn't have that, and been to all these amateur. He didn't have that, but he's stepping up and he's he's doing big things. I think he's doing the right things for boxing for himself. So I think he's doing the right things, and people are going to say what they want to say. They want to hate all that. I mean, that's cool, but it's working in his favor.
Of course. Now let's turn back to yourself. 27th of June, you're taking on Jermaine McDonald. Tell us what you know of Jermaine McDonald. Why was he the right guy at the right time for your comeback fight?
We had a couple people that we reached out to, and he was one of them, and he said yes. And he's a good tough opponent, and it's just somebody that's going to be in there. He'll be able to test me, and if I can go in there and win with style and win with fashion, then okay, let's make another run at this thing. But if I go in there and I struggle with this, then I think it might be all right. Maybe we ought to rethink this. But I fully anticipate going in there and winning in fashion. I'm putting in the work. I'm back to training with my family. For us, it's a big family thing. And, my family is my support system, and they are fully backing me and behind me on all this. So I'm still young. I'm only 34 years old. So we're going to give it another run and see what we can do.
Of course, and we are looking forward to that. So, you say there that you're coming back into the sport, and that, whether it's any fighter of any level, if it's after a loss or an injury or a hiatus away from the ring, you never truly know until you're under those bright lights what is in the tank. So, but in terms of training and building up towards this fight, what is different? The main differences between Jeff Page at 34 and Jeff Page Jr. when he retired or took a hiatus back in 2017. What's the main differences you're feeling now?
I'm not as young as I once was. So, I mean, training at 34 and 24, is a huge difference. In my mind, I'm going to always say I'm 24, though. But you really, as you get a little bit older, and like I said, I know I'm still young, but even, as you get a little bit older, you really got to take care of your body so much more now than I did, when I was in my early 20s. In my early 20s, I'd stay up late, go out, go have fun, and wake up early and go into work and still training like it was nothing. Now, I got I'm married, I got a family, I got kids, 4 of them, so and we're constantly busy doing. All my kids are in sports right now, and so I'm running around doing that, and I'm trying to train, make sure I get enough sleep. I'm eating right. You have to be a lot more disciplined now, and I've really set my mind on being more disciplined for myself, and I'm just feeling so good about it, and my body is feeling good, and I'm feeling strong, so I'm excited to see what I can do.
That's great to hear. Now you say, you're a father of 4 beautiful children, and over in the UK we had a huge fight recently between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn, 2 fighters that followed in the father's footsteps. It was a huge fight. Do you see any
Yep.
potential in any of your 4 children that they might lace up the gloves one day?
I would like for them to, but if they don't want to, I don't want to push it, because I know to be able to be successful, it is a lifestyle that you have to live. And if you are not willing to live that lifestyle, then really you're going to do it for fun. And, people do that, and there's nothing wrong with it. You need people like that for the sport of boxing. But if you truly want to be successful, I feel it is a lifestyle, and you have to be extremely selfish. And, nobody likes anybody that's selfish, and it sucks. But personally, I feel that's what you have to be if you want to reach the top and reach your goals.
Of course. So since that last fight, and you mentioned that you went to the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight, and that's what really inspired you to make this comeback. I know you mentioned that you had some family tragedies, and I offer my condolences to that. But was there any other time in the time you've had away from the ring where you had this kind of urge and didn't really act on it, or has it kind of been left dormant, maybe?
It's it's been kind of dormant. I mean, but I grew up fighting. I grew up with 4 brothers, and we just always grew up fighting, and kind of just it's always been just a family thing for us. And then my grandma one day bought us some boxing gloves because she got tired of seeing us hit each other with our fist. And so my dad was like, all right, well, let's go to the boxing gym. And me and all my brothers go to the boxing gym. And then my uncles are there. And so, it's just ever since I was little, it's just been a big family thing. And, I kind of hate to say it, but it's kind of always been the gel that's kind of held us together. So, and, I'm not going to put it all on me, but when I stopped boxing, everybody kind of went off and did their own thing. But now that I am boxing again and fighting, everybody's coming back together, and it's a phenomenal feeling, and I love it.
Yeah, that's really, really good to hear. Looking through your record before we penciled in this chat, there is of course one standout name on your resume, and that was Artur Beterbiev back in 2014. We've gone on to see what he's achieved in the sport, an absolute wrecking ball of a man. There was no shame in losing to Beterbiev, who's a pound for pound superstar. Can you briefly talk to me about that fight and tell me about being in there with a wrecking ball in Beterbiev, one of the I think he's universally agreed that he's one of the most fearful men on the planet.
Yeah, it felt like somebody had a 2x4 and was hitting me with the 2x4. So, I think he's phenomenal. He was the first undisputed world champion since Roy Jones Jr. back at light heavyweight back in '96. So it was a phenomenal experience to share the ring with him, and I truly felt I had the style to beat him. I think I was too young and immature at my time in my career for that fight. But being 24 and thinking you can take on the entire world, I was like, yeah, let's get after it. I don't care what this guy's done. I'm faster. I'm strong. I can hit hard too. So, but it's just a world of difference when you get in there with somebody that's had the experience that he had compared to what I had.
Of course. Did you have the feeling that night that you'd stepped in the ring with a potential future superstar and that he'd go on to have the amount of success that he had? Obviously, we knew he had
Oh
the
yeah,
standout amateur pedigree and a great amateur career, but he was like a fledgling pro at that point. Did you know you'd been in the ring with somebody great?
I knew after the fight ended, I knew I was like, this dude's gonna be a star. I mean, he was already on the right track to begin with. And I was hoping that, me taking that fight and, pulling off an upset would have, slingshotted me to my stardom. But, it just didn't work out in my favor, and that's okay. But I knew after that, like, this dude is going to be a star. He's going to be a world champion, and it's not going to be long before he is.
Yeah, of course. We've seen him take out a great fighter. We also seen him go 1-1 with Dimitri Bivol, two fight of the year contenders. It looks likely that they're potentially looking at a trilogy fight later on this year. Now, the general consensus is that Dimitri Bivol is maybe on the uprise still, that he's not met his peak, but maybe due to age and some injuries, that Beterbiev might be on the decline, which, as good as he is, a decline is still a decline. Do you share
Yeah,
those thoughts? Do you think Bivol goes into a potential trilogy as the favorite against Beterbiev?
I think so. I think the first fight was a toss up between the two. Uh, a lot of people thought Bivol did win it. I think it was a toss up. The second fight I thought was clear as day was Bivol, and I think the third fight it's just going to be even further apart than it was on the second one, and because I do. What's Bivol? 34 years old,
Somewhere around
33.
there, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So he's still young in the sport, and Beterbiev is 40 now. So he is on the backside, but of course he's still one of the most feared guys at light heavyweight. You can't take that away from him with his power and his skill and everything. You can never take that away. But I think just Bivol, he's strong, he's smart, and he keeps his distance better than anybody at light heavyweight that I've seen in a long time.
A name you mentioned earlier on at 175 was the great Roy Jones Jr. We know he competed at multiple weights, but how do you feel the Roy Jones that competed at 175 would fit into the mix with the likes of Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev?
Roy at 175, nobody's touching Roy at 175. I think, man, it was just different, These guys, I think these guys were so different back in the day. Then, you see things that people talk about, Hagler fighting Gennady. You know, I as much as I love Gennady, I don't think that fight would have been close either. I think Hagler would have, beat Gennady up. I don't think he would have stopped him because Gennady's proven he's got a major chin on him, taking shots from Canelo like he did. So, but yeah, I just think we're in a different generation of boxing now. Even compared to 15, 20 years ago. It's just, it's a whole different sport, a whole different game, and the way people fight are just so different.
Of course. Now, obviously, this fight the fighters that we're talking about there were light heavyweights, and that's where you fought Artur Beterbiev. Looking again to your comeback fight, of course, it's a comeback fight. There'll be no titles on the line, and there's no fixed weight class, maybe. But is there a weight division you're targeting? Is there a comeback weight division that you'd be looking at? Should you be successful in your return fight?
I'm looking to come back at cruiserweight. So, there's a couple names on the list at cruiserweight that, I'd like to get after. So, Tommy Fury being one of those names. So, and then, you guys got a couple other guys over there in the UK. So, a couple other top guys. So,
yeah, so it's one of those divisions that for a long time I think went under the radar, and then in recent years you had Alexander Usyk obviously running undisputed at that weight.
I think Usyk brought the division back to life.
Of course, and now in the UK we have I'm not sure how many you'd be familiar with, but Chev Clark and Vidal Riley recently fought for our British title.
Yep.
Alois Jr. is a young fighter coming up, and then obviously on the world team, Richard Riakporhe, he's just moved up to heavyweight. Chris Billam-Smith, former world champion. So
yep.
with Jaya Pataya, Ramirez, Badu Jack, it's becoming a real glamorous division in these fights.
Yep. Yeah, and I think Vidal beats CBS. So, just my thought after watching them both fight. I'm thinking I mean, and let me get a couple more fights, and maybe I could throw my name in there too and get the opportunity to fight one of them guys.
Of course, would you be happy to travel to the UK for one of those fights? It's a bit.
I would love to come to the UK. I love traveling, and I love going to different countries for boxing and fighting and everything. So it's a sport that you definitely get to experience different cultures and different parts of the world for. And I've traveled, I got to travel to Australia for a training camp with Blake Caparella, who's, a top cruiserweight as well. And, I've maintained contact with him throughout the years. The last time I was there was 10 years ago almost. So, and I think he's a phenomenal guy, and I think he can do something at cruiserweight as well.
Yeah, of course. We'll keep an eye on the cruiserweight division and what may or may not lie ahead. Speaking of June 27th, the headline act, if you like, Deontay Wilder, former WBC heavyweight world champion, making his comeback on with respect to where he has been operating, a bit more of a low-key comeback fight. Do you think it's the right idea for Deontay Wilder to continue boxing? We've seen him reign supreme for so long, but those fights with Fury took a lot out of him, and losses to Joe Parker and Zhilei Zhangwei, he just didn't look like the killer he was before. Do you think it's right that Deontay Wilder's gloving him up again?
It's hard to count somebody out that can punch like that, and he did just have shoulder surgery. So I am interested to see what he can do now. I don't think he'll have any trouble with Herndon when he fights him here in a couple weeks. But, I mean, of course, it's exciting, like I said, he's used to be on top of the world and was the most feared guy in the world for many years. So to be on the card with him and then to see, potentially a future world champ in the ring, another, 3-time, that'll be a third time winning it for him. So that'll be awesome.
Of course. Now with Deontay Wilder, you can speak better than anyone as being an American yourself, part of American boxing. But do you think it's safe to say or fair to say that Deontay Wilder for a long time people thought he was overrated, that they never give him any credit for his boxing ability, that they seen him as just a knockout artist, which he done very well. But now it's gone the opposite scale where he's almost become underappreciated, that people don't appreciate that he carried American heavyweight boxing for so long, and maybe he didn't have the most eye-catching style like a Lomachenko or a Usyk, but what he done very well, and it was very effective. Do you think he's underappreciated for what he done for American boxing and heavyweight boxing in general?
I really think so. And people would call him a one-trick pony, but I mean, say what you want. You know, he was, and he said it perfectly. I can't remember what fight he said it after, but you got to be perfect for 12 rounds to beat him. He only has to be perfect for 1 second.
Yeah.
And that 1 second and that one shot is all he needs. So, you know, everybody loves to see a knockout, you know, especially the knockouts that he would provide for us. So I hate to say it, but you know, he was underappreciated, but I loved it. I loved watching him fight, and then you know, seeing, like I said, seeing him back when I was 17 years old in USA national boxing tournament, knocking people out. Then you know, I knew back then he was going to be a star. So it's exciting to see, and I truly hope that he can do something again.
Absolutely. And just one other name before we round out that I want to chuck at you that's making a high profile comeback. Manny Pacquiao, 4, 5 years out of the ring. He's 46, 47 years of age, going straight into a WBC welterweight world title fight with Mario Barrios. What's your thoughts there, Jeff? Do you think that Manny Pacquiao's star power is deserving of walking into a world title shot, or should he be made to earn that shot like every other major contender?
I think he should have to earn it, but for Barrios, it'll be a good name. It'll be a good win. I think he's going to win. But Pacquiao's proven time and time again he's going to be in shape. He's going to come to fight. He's not going to go in there just for a paycheck. He doesn't need the money. We all know that. But you know, it'll be a good test for Barrios. But I think Pacquiao should have to at least take a fight and earn it. You know, as opposed to, well, he's got the name, so let's just give it to him. I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I think I'm 10.
But
Tending to
that's
agree.
just my opinion.
Yeah, like I say, I'm in line to agree with you, Jeff. So just to close out, 27th of June, the comeback is on. What is the plan? God willing that you get the victory there. Is the plans beyond that? Are you just taking it at that fight and then everything else comes afterwards? What's the mindset heading into 27th of June?
You know, I fully anticipate winning with an exciting knockout June 27th. And then, you know, we'll keep working and we'll keep training and see what's going to come our way next. And then there's there's another event in October that I've been invited to come fight on, provided I do get the win. But when after I get the win, I want to be active. I had 11 fights in my first year when I turned pro. And so I fought 3 times in 24 days at one point. And I don't want to be that busy. It's hard to stay that busy. So especially when you get a little bit older, but I want to get busy again, you know, and try to, you know, I want to climb the ranks fast and I want to get the big fights because I think I can do something at cruiserweight. I have the hand speed, I have the foot speed. So, and I'm ready to test my power against these guys. And some people might not say I don't have power, but hey, I knocked down Artur Beterbiev, and I was the first one to ever do it. So
Awesome stuff. We are really excited to see the comeback, to follow the journey. Jeff, I really appreciate you speaking to SimBoxx. I thank you for your time and I wish you the best of luck come the 27th of June.
hey, I appreciate it, man. Enjoy the rest of your day and be looking forward to talking with you again.